and welcome to Deep Dive with Jamie Stein, where we take a deep dive look at all things reality TV, pop culture, and the world at large. I'm an intuitive and an empath, which means I pick up on the thoughts, feelings, and energy percolating in other people and the world around me. I believe there is meaning waiting to be found at every turn if you're willing to see it. So join me as we dismantle everything from trash TV to high spiritual concepts and learn more about ourselves, each other, and how we're all connected. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Deep Dive with Jamie Stein. I am recording this today, November 11th. We are getting towards the end of the year. If you can believe it, time has flown by. And yeah, it's definitely been a busy season for me. I was away almost the entire month of October. I was in Arizona doing a 2-week workshop, and it was one of the most deep, powerful workshops I've ever done in my life. And I was on the road to and from there, and then I came back to New Mexico, and I have moved into my first official proper home of my own, where I've put my name on a lease. Previously, I was bouncing around to different sublets, but I'm committed for now, and I just got my stuff shipped out from LA. So definitely a deep time of transition, a lot going on. I feel like there's a lot going on for a lot of people. So we're all hanging out in our respective processes. On that note, today is going to be maybe what I would call a little bit of a different type of episode. It's going to be a solo episode, and it's truly just going to be a quick hit episode. I actually was originally going to do this as an Instagram reel. Anyone who follows me on Instagram knows I often do what I call quick hit drop-ins to specific moments on the shows, but they're actually quite in-depth and long. They often go up to 10 minutes, and it just suddenly occurred to me, these are actually possible little podcast episodes. And rather than investing all that time and energy into an Instagram reel, why not hop on the mic and make this a little podcast episode? And you guys can tell me if you like these quick hits. And if you do, perhaps I can do more of them. So on that note, just going to keep this quick, simple, and easy. I want to revisit that moment in Salt Lake City when Todd and Bronwyn went out to get ice cream together, and Bronwyn lets him know quite clearly, I got this dessert because it has a cherry on top. You know I hate it when you take the cherry from me. Before, I like to save the cherry to the end, and you know I hate it when you take the cherry from me before I get a chance to finish it. And what does Todd Newport do? Not 30 seconds later, he defiantly takes that cherry and he fucking eats it. And he gives Bronwyn a look like, what are you going to do about it? I know this moment, it was like a small moment, but it was a very charged moment. And I know it was a moment that had a lot of people talking. And I definitely clocked it as well, of course, and was definitely very drawn to the subtext of that moment. So I just thought, what better moment to just drop into and kind of intuitively feel around Todd towards eating Bronwyn's cherry and seeing if we can get any kind of deeper information about the deeper meaning of what was possibly going on there for our own reflection and rumination. So on that note, I've had no plan for this. I haven't prepared. This is going to be like a spontaneous live drop-in. I'm just going to close my eyes, drop into my body, visualize Bronwyn with her cherry, and see what comes forward. All right, guys. So here we go. Oh, wow. Okay. Wow. Okay. This is interesting. So there are 2 distinct layers here for me. One of which is not surprising at all, which has to do with power and control. And we'll get there in a moment. But the first most immediate layer is actually quite surprising. And it's not something that I picked up on immediately while watching the show. And it actually, if it's right, makes more sense of some of Todd's behavior in the scene. And I'm I'm just giggling because, yeah, like I said, this is a bit surprising and unexpected, but I'm just going to go with it because it came through quite strongly. I have to say, when I drop into Todd and I take in Bronwyn, especially like dressed in the way that she was. I mean, she kind of almost looked like a little girl with like her pink outfit on. I think she even had a headband. She's sitting there. They're like in an ice cream parlor. I mean, it really did almost feel like a father with a daughter. And she's sitting there, you know, and we all know Bronwyn kind of has a way of presenting. She has her sort of high-pitched good girl voice that to me masks a much deeper sense of agency and adult power. But, you know, she's sort of speaking in that high-pitched voice and she's talking about the cherry and how she likes to save it to the end. And as Todd, as I take her in, what I most immediately become aware of, I mean, I guess I'll say it immediately registers as playful. It immediately registers as mischievous. And like I said before, I kind of hear these words like, what the fuck are you going to do about it? It's like she's talking about the cherry and he's like fucking taking the cherry. And there is this question of like, what the fuck are you going to do about it? But it doesn't most immediately land with me from an antagonistic place or domineering. But again, domineering in a very playful, mischievous way that, if I'm being honest, starts to feel erotic to me. Like it feels like a game. It feels like a game they're playing. I want to be clear, not that I think Bronwyn is necessarily playing the game in this very moment, and we'll talk about that in a second because that's where this is going to go. But it's almost like this moment for Todd represents a game that they tend to play in their relationship, where Bronwyn plays the part of like, you know, the disempowered little girl who's prattling on about her cherry. And then Todd comes in as sort of like the big bad wolf who fucking eats the cherry and kind of like pokes at her and punishes her and takes away her favorite plaything. And then it's like, if I follow the spirit of this, it's like Bronwyn would, well, kind of what she did. She kind of giggled and was like, you asshole. Like I kind of see her blushing and sort of like pretend being mad, but also like her cheeks getting flushed. And again, like this just feels, there's no other words for it. This feels like a sex game to me. It feels very erotic. And if I follow this thread, it almost feels like a pattern of like S&M in their relationship. And like, these are the parts they play, and that there really is kind of a fetishization of the power dynamic in their relationship, where she's kind of like the frivolous little girl prattling on about her cherries. And then, like I said, Todd's the big bad wolf who kind of comes in and, ho, 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 little girl, I'm going to take away your cherries. And then they both get really turned on by it. I mean, even just saying this, like my body is lighting up. It feels like an energetic game they play. So like I said, I was not expecting this at all. And the reason why I say it kind of makes sense of some of Todd's behavior is I noticed Todd sort of moved between two energetic postures. There was definitely part of him that felt very distant and checked out. And that felt like the part of him that's like fed up with the show. Also kind of like fed up with, Bronwyn's drama with the women. Again, I have more to say about that in context of what just came through. But then I would also notice there were these other moments where there would be this sort of playful light in his eye, and he'd be chuckling. He almost seemed amused. And so the amusement now feels like it makes a little bit more sense in light of this. I mean, if I'm right about this possible broader context of playing out this erotic game where again, he's sort of the stern father who comes in and takes away Bronwyn's playthings, and then they both get turned on and like, fuck, that's like what it feels like to me. And I guess, the last thing I'll say before I sort of shift it into the deeper level is like, in terms of Todd being fed up with the show, right? Or Todd being fed up with Bronwyn talking about Lisa and her arguments with the women. Suddenly, in this context, there's something about Bronwyn doing the show that makes a lot more sense to me, because I feel like people have wondered about that. Like, it just seems like Todd is so against the show. And as they talk about on the show, it seems like what's coming up on the show could possibly impact his business and his work life. So for a lot of people, there has been this looming question of like, why did he ever even agree to this in the first place? And it's interesting because in this dynamic, it's almost like what I'm picking up on. Again, I'm starting to smile as I say this. A part of Todd that actually likes Bronwyn as this little troublemaker. Again, this naughty little girl who, dressed in pink, who comes along and causes trouble, because then it allows him to be that stern, grumpy father who gets to scold her. And again, this just feels like there's just some sort of erotic component to this. And so it's almost like if Todd is this sort of buttoned down, serious guy in his business life, I'm looking over here at Bronwyn, and I kind of get a kick out of having this sort of squirrely, troublemaking little girl who causes problems for daddy. It's like I might disapprove of it on the surface, but deep down, again, it's kind of titillating me, and it's kind of turning me on that she's such a fussy little troublemaker, and then I get to come in and kind of punish her and scold her. So it does sort of make more sense why he might be open to her doing something like the show, which is seemingly so disruptive to him in his usual life. And again, we don't really know much about what's gone on in her past. Obviously now there's mention of these like possible past charges. And I think there's sort of rumblings and grumblings that like Todd got her out of trouble. That kind of makes more sense, in the sense that there might be a part of if Bronwyn did get into some kind of trouble, and if she has a pattern of getting into trouble, and if she has a pattern of making things quote unquote difficult for Todd, there might actually be a part of him deep down that gets a kick out of it and likes it. Because like I said, then he gets to play the part of the stern father who comes in and gives her a scolding, and then they both get turned on by it. Again, my body is lighting up as I say all this. So that's kind of the first surprising layer. But having said that, it's interesting, right? Because I feel like what we were watching in the scene, it didn't play out like that. And it didn't feel like it was playing out like that for Bronwyn. So that's why I was very careful to say, I don't think Bronwyn, it's almost like Bronwyn was bringing something new to Todd, is what it felt like, where like she actually was attempting to assert herself. And she actually was attempting in this scenario to draw a boundary and to claim some sort of agency for herself, not as a setup to like subtextual, erotic, sexual power play, but in a real way. But Todd was greeting it in the old way. And it's kind of like what I'm feeling off of all of this is that, like Bronwyn is finding her sea legs through the show. And that she is trying to assert something different for herself. That almost like there's a way that there has been a power dynamic, right? Where Todd essentially pulls the strings, right? And he supports her and gives her the life. And there's like a dynamic between them. And then it was getting acted out erotically. And it's almost, again, if I'm right about this, and it's almost like that worked for Bronwyn for a while, because like Todd's the guy who came in, he was the knight in shining armor, he gave her this life, he took care of Gwen. Obviously now he's like supporting her parents in their time of need. And so that this really worked for her for a long time. But I'm getting the sense that it might no longer be working for her. And it really doesn't make sense, because the truth is, as I mentioned before, I actually think Bronwyn is an incredibly powerful woman. And we're not going to get into this, but the beginning of the season when she came at Lisa for those lawsuits, everyone was loving that. And it was sort of like, oh, Bronwyn ate. And I get it. Like she was cool. She was calm. She collected. She handles herself well under pressure. But what I was feeling under that cool, calm, collected confrontation was like, it was vicious. Like that's what it felt like to me. Like Bronwyn's energy felt vicious. Like she was going in for the fucking kill. It just felt to me like Lisa really got to her with the whole necklace thing, that she felt humiliated. She felt embarrassed. And again, I'm feeling it now. I feel this like intensity in my chest. Like I am going to fucking get you, and I'm going to take you down. I'm going to stay cool, calm, collected. I'm never going to break a sweat, but you are fucking going down. I am hunting to fucking kill. And so I mention this just because like I feel like this is the level of intensity in Bronwyn. This is the strength of her life force energy. This is a woman who fucking plays to win. And, you know, what we know of her past, obviously, is she was never allowed to own her power directly, obviously, right? Like never allowed to own her power directly. And like even just like the logistics of what she went through of being a single mother. I mean, I believe she's talked about like relying on her parents to help her for childcare, right? So it's like even that alone, there's a way in which that gives me information. Like she was, I don't know if at the mercy is quite the right language, but you get what I'm saying. Like she was still at the mercy of her parents, like Eve is an adult raising her daughter. So I can imagine, you know, we've seen her mother on TV. We know she came from a strict Mormon upbringing. I can imagine there was a lot of shaming messages towards Bronwyn about her predicament of being a single mom, you know, having to raise Gwen on her own. And just even that, right? Like Bronwyn wouldn't be able to push back. She wouldn't be able to assert herself. She wouldn't be able to say, stop shaming me. She wouldn't be able to have her powerful boundary because, again, she's relying on these people to help her. So I just think there's been a deeply indoctrinated energetic pattern of her of like, there is no room or space for me to have this powerful agency as a powerful woman. And I think that's why the energy then becomes like vicious and ruthless because it's hanging out underground. But if it didn't have to hang out underground and if she were able to let this energy move through her in a really direct way, you know, she really could be her own Todd Newport. You know, she could be generating her own fortune. She wouldn't be relying on anyone else for help or support. So this is all just to say, like, I experienced Bronwyn as a really fucking powerful woman who has learned from an early age that she has to sublimate her power and she has to rely on others to help her survive and maneuver through life. So in comes Todd and she's used to playing this disempowered role, right? It's like all she knows to survive and to live and to thrive. And so then, you know, initially it's okay because it's what she's used to. This is how she gets by. And so initially it works to possibly fetishize it, to sexualize it, to play it out erotically. This is just what we do. This is just how it is, right? But meanwhile, there's this deeper power. She's like a dominant posing as a submissive, right? And there is this deeper power that wants to come through her. And so now, you know, at the very least, we know she's on the show now. She's getting her time in the spotlight. She's earning some of her own money. And not only that, but like, I think, you know, we see a little bit of like what we sometimes see on these shows. I think she's maybe using the camera to kind of air some stuff out to put the screws to Todd. I mean, I feel like we've seen other people do that. I feel like Paris Hilton really did this with Kathy Hilton on their little, whatever that documentary was where Paris first started talking about her traumatized experiences at that boarding school. But, you know, sometimes when people are raised in oppressive silence or in situations of oppressive silence, and then they get on these shows, you kind of see them use the cameras to bring stuff up because they know if it's on camera, the other person can't do their usual tricks of like shutting them down or shaming them for trying to bring something up because the other person knows the whole world's going to see it. And so there's a way you can kind of put the screws to someone by bringing them on camera. I mean, I kind of almost feel like that's what she was doing with the sundae thing of like, I'm really clearly articulating this boundary and I'm doing it on camera because it's kind of like, I mean, he actually did end up eating the cherry, but it's sort of like the whole world's going to see. So you have to be on your best behavior. You kind of have to listen to me here. And I think like that's maybe why we saw her last year. I mean, again, the whole thing was so muddled and now we don't really know what's true and what's not true. But, you know, she started to bring up Todd's relationship to infidelity on camera, you know, and then you did see them navigating something towards the end of last year where Todd's behavior and the way he treated her was captured on camera and the audience had a response. And then you saw them navigating that and Todd had to take responsibility for something. So I think that Bronwyn, this is all just to say, I do think Bronwyn is finding a bit of her sea legs through the show. And I think she's using the show to gather some of those inner resources and to start drawing some more of those boundaries for herself. And like I said, she's doing it on camera. And so all of this just to say, it feels to me like Bronwyn might be outgrowing this old pattern. The powerful part of her might no longer be comfortable just deferring to Todd and playing out this little game. And it feels like she might really be trying to draw some actual boundaries here. And so again, that's why it's interesting, because when you see her later in the scene start to say, like, Todd, I'm trying to say something to you and you're basically not taking me seriously. You're misunderstanding me. You're brushing me aside. Again, his first impulse is to actually laugh and chuckle. And to me, it makes so much more sense in this particular context of, like, he's not used. Not only is he not used to her asserting herself in this way, but he's also, what he is used to is not taking her seriously. Like, that's been the whole dynamic. You're the silly, troublemaking little girl who then gets into trouble. You're not the empowered woman who asserts her emotional needs in an energetically equal way. You're not the powerful woman who demands to be seen, heard, and listened to. Like, that's not the dynamic. And I think he's used to not taking her seriously in a certain type of way, essentially. And it's interesting because when I drop into Todd, the scene basically ends, or towards the end, Bronwyn says to him, I'm telling you, it touched something. And if it touched something in me, meaning the tarot reading, if it touched something in me, then it's worthwhile. And when I sort of drop into Todd and feel into him taking this in, yeah, it's so interesting. So this is the deeper layer I want to get to. It as Todd, oof, I don't like it. You know, like, I don't like Bronwyn holding this emotional line for herself. And it like, my heart starts to like freeze up. There's like an armor over my heart. And the voice I hear inside around this is like, I will not take you seriously. Like, that's what I feel from Todd. Like, I will not take you seriously. I will not see, hear, and feel you as an energetic equal. Again, as I'm saying this, I'm feeling the intensity in like my whole body. I feel it in my thighs. It's like, I won't do it. And it's almost like, oh, and this explains him checking out. It's like when I see Bronwyn having a connected emotional experience and really asserting herself in it, it really is like the words I'm hearing, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to see it. I don't want to know it. It's literally as Todd, it's like, I am shutting it out. I will not acknowledge it. I will not take it in. Like, I won't. Because it's almost like, as Todd, I mean, I'm just going to touch this a little bit. I feel like this would have to be its own episode to really track where this goes. But it's like, if I, as Todd, entertain this possibility of like looking at Bronwyn, breathing deep, fully taking her in, taking in her emotional needs, taking in her emotional boundaries, taking her seriously, treating her as an energetic equal in this relationship, I just immediately feel rage. It's just, it creates a channel and an avenue for some unprocessed rage in Todd. And again, I'm just hearing the words, I won't fucking do it. There's a surrender there. It's interesting. I mean, it's interesting to talk about surrender because this all started with a lens of like either literal or figurative S&M, but it's almost like surrender to Todd. No fucking way am I surrendering. Like, that there is a real relationship to being in the power position and maintaining the power position, and not being in the power position and being in a form of surrender where he's not in control of the situation. It brings up some buried rage inside of him. So I have to imagine Todd, at some point, if I'm right about all this, had some experience around emotional surrender, vulnerability, and like being humiliated and enraged, perhaps around women, romantic partnership, but like now there's something in him that's like, I'm gonna fucking be in control. So this dynamic of Bronwyn being the kind of like frivolous, troublemaking little girl who gets scolded and punished, like, it works for him because he's always in the power position and he doesn't want to give that up. So it's almost like, you know, if Bronwyn is the dominant posing as the submissive, it's almost like there's a submissive aspect of Todd posing as the dominant, which makes sense because, I mean, I think we're all everything, right? I mean, I'm not personally someone who's explored S&M, but I think I think that's part of it, right? That I think like, I don't know if I'm making this up. I feel like I've heard like in some ways the most evolved version of it is when people can like switch back and forth between both. You know, we all have powerful energy and then we all have areas where we want to surrender, right? And it just feels like, it just feels like there's been a power dynamic here that used to work for both of them, where Bronwyn is the disempowered, troublemaking little girl who gets in trouble with daddy. She gets taken care of and he gets to be in control. But now Bronwyn's power is seeking a way out, and she's drawn some boundaries, and she's making some emotional requests, and she's using the show to kind of start circling the hangar of the airport on this journey. And Todd's kind of like, I don't know how I feel about this. So it feels to me like they're maybe at an impasse moment in their relationship. So I'll be curious to see where this goes. The last thing I'll say about this that's just sort of coming to me too, it's just so interesting, this notion of like Todd not seeing Bronwyn necessarily as an energetic equal and not really taking in her vulnerability all the way. It reminds me of that scene last season when I think they were talking, was it them talking about the possibility of Gwen reconnecting with her biological grandparents, and they were out at lunch. And I remember Todd just having such like a stern point of view about it, but like, we're not doing it. And it was so strange because it was protective of Gwen. It was protective of Bronwyn. There was this loving aspect to it, but the way he brought it in, I mean, again, it was kind of similar to the ice cream scene. He was shutting Bronwyn down. It was like, this is how it is, case closed. And it just felt like it walked this line of loving protection, but also almost like stern cruelty. And it just makes so much sense to me now, because it's like, again, if I'm right about all this, it's just this notion of there is a way I love and support you and look after you, but there's also a way I'm not going to take you seriously. It wasn't Todd sitting down across from Bronwyn, looking in the eye and hearing her. It wasn't Todd taking her in. It wasn't Todd holding space for Bronwyn trying to navigate an unexpected twist in this old situation. It wasn't Todd willing to hear her when she said, we might want to do this. Again, it feels like this ice cream scene. It's like, I'm not going to actually hear you and take you in. I'm not going to take you seriously. What I say fucking goes. Period. The end. And it's like his love comes through this stern father role where it's just my way or the fucking highway. And it allows him to continue not to surrender into actual equal emotional partnership with Bronwyn. And you also just feel the flickers of that disowned anger there. Like, it's just like he gets pissed. Oh, all right, you guys. So this was actually a bit longer than I expected, but still relatively short compared to usual deep dives. So let me know if you like this. Let me know if you want more of these shorter style episodes. And I guess just my final concluding note to all of this, if I were just to put a button on this, what is the deeper meaning of Todd eating that cherry? Yeah, the deeper meaning to me of Todd eating that cherry is like, I'm holding on to power. I'm holding on to control. I'm fighting for the old way. I want things to stay the way they are. I'm comfortable the way they are. And it seems like Bronwyn is maybe starting to disrupt things. And it seems like Bronwyn's inner troublemaker is no longer willing to make trouble according to the old rules. So we'll see where it wants to go. All right, you guys, thanks for bearing with me. And as always, you can follow me on Instagram, Jamie Stein, JamieStein. And as always, feel free to reach out with your own thoughts, hits, and impressions. And yeah, hope you guys are headed into like a great holiday season. And I will see you on the flip side. Bye.